Boy, did this video take a while to make. I've been prepping this video and saying I'm going to make this video for a while, and I finally got all the tape watched, about 10 games or so, got all the stats collected, all of the scout reports written. Today I'm going to be talking about Cavante Turpin, who played in Europe before the USFL, before the NFL, before the Pro Bowls, before everything. We'll go a little bit into him and talk about Cavante for a while and what makes him so great. And then I'm going to talk about Devin Burrell. Devin Burrell is the best returner in Europe, and it's not close. I want to talk about perhaps why I think he could make a UFL roster as a returner, and potentially with a new kickoff rule could see himself on an NFL practice squad, which would be incredibly interesting to see. This was set as homework for me initially, and it turned out to be a very fun project by Caleb Leach, who is going to be watching this video. So hello Caleb, hope I did a good job. Caleb is an NFL scout, and he sent me this homework when I suggested about the new kickoff rule. I mentioned Devin, and I mentioned the kickoff rule, and how he is probably the best at that kickoff rule when it comes to the European ball. So he said to me, look at these two players, tell me what you think. So I thought I'd make that into a video, show everyone my thoughts and my processes on this, and overall come to some kind of a conclusion. So Cavante Turpin. Cavante Turpin was a former returner and receiver at TCU. It would take me way too long to go into his individual awards for receiving and punt returning, and then went into Fan Control League, then found his way to Rogue Law. In Rogue Law, he got 702 all-purpose yards, was instrumental, didn't play the full season, came in as a late replacement. They initially had signed him for next year, but then he entered into the draft to USFL. He was picked in the 13th round and then ended up winning the MVP. So if that doesn't tell you about his ability through adversity and his athletic potential, I don't really know what does. But Cavante's game is so much more than just athleticism, because he does have legit 4.3 speed, 4.31 as pro day, and a 40-inch vertical, and is one of the most athletic players in the world. Let's be honest, he doesn't have all Europe or all America potential. He is one of the most elite athletes, so he's incredible. His speed and his quickness and his lateral movement, his change of direction, his bend in his ankles and his knees when he's going around corners, his acceleration, his burst through the gaps, his vision is all phenomenal. And that is what makes him an NFL Pro Bowler, which he was with the Dallas Cowboys. The biggest knock on Cavante's game is obviously his size. You know, he's a hair under 5'9", he's only about 160 pounds. That's what he's listed at. I'm sure at Dallas they've got him bulked up. When he was in USFL and in his pro day, he was at 158. Regardless of his size, he is one of the toughest receivers I have ever watched on tape. He takes hits, like crazy big hits, will just pop straight up with the ball. He did this in Europe, he did this in the USFL, he does this in the NFL. He is a tough motherfucker, and he will take a hit over the middle, no problem. And has excellent hands as well. That his contact balance and his ability with the ball in his hands and his ability to go through the whole process of the catch, even if he's got an all ACC safety who's just drilled him, he holds onto the ball, and he is a very good possession receiver. So he is far from just a fast punt and kick returner. He is also an elite receiver. I think that's the biggest difference that we have between the two of them. Of course, on paper, they are different, and athletically, profile-wise, they are different. But Cavante has dominated in Europe and then absolutely dominated in the USFL. He's the best receiver there and the best return man there, so it's not really a question. You could argue that Devin's not the best corner in Europe, and I think that's quite a big and important factor, because Cavante is a phenomenal receiver and an all-world returner. Of course, I've talked about Cavante's ability and his speed and his change of direction and whatnot. Now I want to talk about Devin. Devin is an undersized corner. I do not think he is a corner. We're talking next level, he's a nickel. He has aggressive hands, he is very physical with receivers, which has caused some flags in the past, but as a nickel, I think you do need to be able to do that. Now, Devin is actually a similar size, listed at 5'8" on the European League of Football and 183 pounds, although weirdly, he is listed at 6 foot in college, which I don't really understand. I know colleges can be pretty loose with their measuring, but he went to Missouri Western State, which is a Division II school. He played 31 games for them at safety and at DB. He only got one interception, which is a surprise to me. It wasn't as illustrious as a returner as Cavante, which sounds like a small thing, but we'll get to it. From Missouri, he then went to the Allgäu Comets. From there, he went to the Leipzig Kings. Of course, the Leipzig Kings then folded in the European League of Football, and he went to Milan. Played 12 games in the European League of Football, and was by far the best returner of all time. He got 1,820 yards, 7 touchdowns as a punt returner and a kick returner. Led in every category possible. Like, all time, he is second behind Amari Williams, and Amari Williams has like 30 more games. Like, it's very obvious that Devin is going to be the elite kick returner for this league. He's just signed to the Rockall Panthers, and he will be there this season. He does have instances of being a good cover corner on the outside through his games in the ELF, particularly at Milan. Milan was a bad defense though. It's important to note that he was used in safety, at corner, at nickel. They moved him around a lot because their defense was not very good. So perhaps you could put that as a blame for him looking a little rougher in some of these clips, as not an excuse, but as a reasoning for why he got burned in some of these plays, because it could have been potentially with a defensive scheme. As for the negative parts of his game that I think are going to hold him back from getting to the NFL or the UFL as a starting corner, because it's important to note that he is an elite returner, and that is absolutely true, but if he's going to make an impact to the next level, he needs to be able to do it both. The big knock on him at corner is his tackling. His tackling is sometimes reckless, and it doesn't always wrap up. He can kind of go for these big hits and misses them quite drastically at times. At times, he can struggle with bigger bodied receivers if they go over the top because of his size disadvantages. In a similar regard, he has less length. It's harder for him to punch that ball out when the receiver has it in possession, or sometimes on jump balls and such. He is obviously shorter in length, so he is less able to affect the ball when it's high up at the catch point. And against elite receivers like Darryl Stewart Jr., who went to Michigan State, he has shown that his hips are not quite as sharp. Sometimes when he's playing at safety and he's having to turn upfield and change direction, it's not as fluid and as sharp as you would want it to be. Of course, with the USFL and the XFL merging into the UFL, this is a big pool of players that the NFL get to pick from, with players in that league that have returned these style of kicks. However, none of them had the same success in either year that Devin had in Europe. Now, the argument, of course, is that Devin is playing European competition, which is nowhere near as esteemed as the Americans, and that is an extremely valid point. However, when you look into Devin's tape and see him with the ball in his hands, he is sharp, he cuts well, he has excellent vision, he can make stuff happen that is just incredible to watch. There's instances where he's got 3 or 4 all-Europe linebackers and DBs around him, and he makes one move and he's out of there. He's creative as well. Sometimes he can maybe get a little bit too creative behind his punt return ability, and he'll be dancing around for quite a while, but he makes it happen. He's a big play player when it comes to having the ball in his hands. There is no one in Europe that comes close to his ability with that football. So if Devin's going to go to the States, I think the UFL suits him well. I know the UFL doesn't have the same kickoff rule, but if he can adapt to that, then I think that he has a spot in the UFL, at least as a trialist or as a practice squad player or someone that is solely responsible for returning kicks. The league is physical in the USFL. It was a lot more physical than Europe. That is blatantly obvious. I need to see him step up for that. I know he's going to be playing in Poland this season, so that'll be a good instrument on how he plays, because he's going to be playing people like Vienna Vikings, who are a very physical team. He needs to show that he can deal with that physicality and give a little bit more back in order to make that step up into the UFL. If I'm being completely subjective and giving my wholehearted opinion, I think the NFL might be too big of a jump. Devin's going to be 29 soon, and there are a whole crop of 21, 22, 23-year-olds coming up in the draft in a few weeks, as well as 25, 26-year-old guys who have played in the USFL or the XFL and have the experience with the kickoff rule. From conversations I've had with people in the NFL, they're not just looking at IPP players in Europe. They are actively looking for people they think help on their teams. It's the NFL. Every single stone in the world will be turned over to see if there's any players that are available. So don't for a second think that Devin is not being looked at, likely by a few people in the States. Ultimately, I think that Devin fits best in the UFL at the moment, if he can adapt to the kickoff rule. We didn't see him return a crazy amount in college, but he has obviously developed that part of his game in Europe, and when he has the ball in his hands, he can make shit happen. I would like to see him in the UFL. I think the NFL might be a step up too quickly. We don't see players go from Europe to the NFL. That's an incomprehensible jump. That's huge. So to demand that from a player would be a lot. However, get him into the UFL, have a season there, or 2 seasons there, perhaps he gets a breakout role if the NFL keeps this style of kicks. Because to have 1,800 yards as a return specialist and 7 touchdowns is, you can't ignore that. You simply just can't ignore that. So overall, that is my thoughts on Cavante Turpin and Devin Burrell. Obviously, they're going to be compared quite a lot as 2 excellent return specialists that have played in Europe, and that's my thoughts and feelings and how those 2 of them compare in their athletic profiles and their football ability. Hope this one didn't come across too negative. Of course, it's scouting. It's always going to be a difficult conversation when they say that I don't think a player can make it to the NFL just yet. Hope you guys enjoyed. I've got obviously more things in the works. The Raiders tier list I want to do very soon, and all my videos have been doing well in the high school football players, so I'd like to continue doing that. Support has been excellent. Thank you very much. I know it's taken a little bit of time to upload this video, but it's because of so much tape that I had to watch for this. So years of tape. So thank you all for being patient. Thank you, Caleb, for setting me this task. It was good fun to see players in different leagues and kind of expand my scouting networks and my scouting opinions. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. Thank you very much. See you later, and goodbye.